All right, welcome back. Week 2 of the Every Big Counts Challenge for 2024 is done, and I can't wait to show you everything I've gotten done. It was a busy week for me. So welcome to Garden Preserve. I'm Carter, and I'm so glad you're here today. All right, let's take a look at these one by one. So as I mentioned last week, I was having a real jonesing for some peaches. So I got my peach fix this week in a big way. I bought a lot of peaches, I probably shouldn't have bought that many in retrospect, but I did, and we just enjoyed them, and I made use of every single one of them. So hopefully I'll make it through at least a couple of years now before I need to get back and do peaches again. Okay, so we're going to start with one of my favorites, one I do every time I do peaches, and that is just a classic peach preserves. Now I use the recipe out of the Pomona's Pectin cookbook because I like to use allulose, but you know, of course, any recipe you want to use is just fine. Mine is on page 108 if you're going to use the Pomona's Pectin cookbook. So let's walk through that. I just literally this morning, I ate the last spoonful out of the last jar I had from 2022. So I am very excited to have these on the shelf. And I almost wish I'd done a second batch because I only have 5 of them. And when you buy a lot of peaches, you actually have to peel a lot of peaches. And I mean a lot of peaches. I did 4 projects. I'm just going to talk briefly about peaches and peeling them and slicing them one time. And then the rest will just get the fun part done, the projects done. So in order to peel these peaches, I'm going to use the boiling water method. Now this is not my preferred method, but it is the method most often recommended. So you treat it like tomatoes and you slice an X in the bottom and you throw the peach into a pot of boiling water, bounce it around for a minute or so, and then plunge it into an ice bath. The skin will then slip off quite readily, and that part is absolutely fine. The tricky part then, for me, particularly with a peach, is that it is pretty darn slippery underneath that skin. And so you have this round, slippery ball that you're holding in one hand and a sharp knife that you're holding in the other hand. And you're trying to cut through to get the pit out. So it can be something that requires more attention, which is absolutely fine, but it's not my preferred method. So after this one show here, demonstration here of how it's normally done, I go back to my regular method, which is to do the slices first and then peel each individual slice with a paring knife. That just goes much faster to me. I have a much better grip on the piece of peach itself, feels steadier, and I like that. Let's talk for a second about peach options when you're going to be canning. Now basically there are 2 different colors of peaches. There's white and there's yellow. From what I understand, white does not have the same pH profile, and beyond that may still be not safe to can. So I really don't know anything about canning white peaches. I'm not a big fan of them and have never canned them. So if that is your thing, be sure that you do a little investigation on that to make sure you know what you're doing. So I go with yellow peaches. Now there are 2 different types of yellow peaches. There's freestone and there's cling. So freestone, when you cut that peach open, when you cut open the circle, it is going to pull away readily from the pit. With a cling peach, it is not going to pull away, and you're actually going to have to kind of carve the flesh off the pit. Now, I've done both ways. Sometimes you're at the grocery store and they don't know whether it's a freestone or a cling peach, or you're at a roadside stand and you know you've got the 4th cousin who's 14 selling these, and you just don't know exactly what you're going to get. So it's not a big deal. You do it and it works fine, but it will possibly drive you a little nuts trying to get every last bit of peach there. And then there's one other thing that was on these peaches. I have not seen it in a while, quite frankly, but sometimes inside a peach around the pit, it's not only red and a little bit spiky, which is normal in a peach, but it's a little extra hard and there might be some white nodules. Now, as I understand it and have for years, this is all totally normal, not in every peach. I don't know whether it is a variety thing, a weather thing. I don't know, but these had it, and it was one of those ugh moments because I realized I had to do a lot more work to kind of get that out, because that's not part of the peach that I want in my finished product. So you may not have to do nearly as much messing around with dicing up these peaches as I did, but that's what I did, and for that particular reason. So once I get them all diced up, we're going to go into the pan. This is a super easy recipe. I do have an old video on this recipe, so I'm not going to go through it step by step with you here. The old video, I believe it was from the Every Bit Counts Challenge in 2022, which would have been my very first month on YouTube. So if you go back and watch that video, I need you to please bear with me. I couldn't even get myself to do it because I'm sure it is cringeworthy. It was back in the days when I had such a hard time not looking at the camera when I was talking, and it took me a while to really get it through my thick head that you guys wanted to see what I was doing, and it wasn't about me trying to not be rude and look you in the eye talking to you. Anyway, I do have the full recipe over there in pretty significant detail, so if you want to go see it. So let's also talk briefly about Pomona's pectin, if you are not familiar with it. It is a low sugar pectin. So most pectin requires sugar in order to set, and often it requires great gobs of sugar in order to set. Pomona's pectin does not require sugar at all in order to set. It actually requires calcium water. That's how it's activated. And it is something that comes with the pectin. You get everything you need in one of the boxes. So when you're going to add sugar, you can add significantly less regular sugar if you want. You can add honey, you can add maple syrup, you can add some sort of non-calorie sweetener that is heat stable, that is safe to can. So I choose to use allulose, but sugar is what's called for in this recipe, and I think it was just a cup. And that is far better than the probably 4 cups you would find in a ball recipe in order to make 5 little half-pint jars. So as you can see, this recipe is so quick. Once you get the peaches peeled, you can just fly through this. It makes for a beautiful jar. I think it's a 1/4 inch headspace, and these process for 10 minutes in a water bath canner. I use my steam canner. It's just really as easy as it gets. Makes for a great presentation if you want to give these as a gift. I did that one year, and they're always a huge hit because they're beautiful, and you see all these big chunks of peaches in there, and I think they're just lovely in it. All right, next on my peach list is peach sauce. At least that's what I'm calling it. This was not a specific recipe for sauce. This was a recipe actually for jam out of the Pomona's cookbook that I elected not to use the calcium water and pectin in because I didn't want it to set. I really wanted it to be a sauce. And my vision for this is that it will go on top of yogurt or ice cream or cheesecake or angel food cake, or in a cocktail, like turn a glass of champagne into Bellini, or make a mixed cocktail, or just use some seltzer water and mix it up with maybe a squirt of lime. Put it on pancakes and waffles and French toast, and I don't know, it just sounds wonderful to me. And let me tell you, the taste is absolutely amazing. In fact, so amazing that I made a second batch that was a batch and a half, and I'll tell you why as we go along. But I used the recipe on page 57 of the Pomona's Pectin cookbook, maple vanilla peach jam. However, I didn't use the maple or the vanilla. And then I didn't use the pectin or the calcium water, of course. So I used their measurements. I wanted to make sure that I had my pH right. And you'll see as we go through how I did this, but this one I'm really, really happy with. Literally, this recipe is so ridiculously easy. We're not even going to worry about the pectin and calcium water steps because we're not going to be using those. So I'm going to use peaches. enough water to keep them from sticking to the bottom. I'm going to use lemon juice and sweetener. I'm going to use allulose, but sugar is absolutely fine. The recipe calls for sugar. That's all I'm going to do. I don't have to worry about boiling it for a specific time or mixing up my pectin with my sugar. I don't have to worry about any of that because I'm not going to go for a set here. So I am going to get out the immersion blender and I'm going to get this into a very smooth sauce, which is exactly what I want. And after I add the lemon juice, I'm going to boil it down until I am happy with the consistency, because whatever goes into that jar is what's going to come out of that jar. It's not like it's going to set up, firm up any after it goes into the canning jar. So get it exactly the way you want it when you put it in the canning jar. And then I'm going to, because I am off script, I'm not off script on anything that should matter to pH, I am going to do a pH test. And that makes me feel more comfortable knowing that. So let's talk about how I'm going to use this recipe. I mentioned a few of the uses earlier, but the thing that I really intend to do with this is to use it as part of my Christmas gift this year. So it'll be for neighbors and friends. And what I am envisioning is a little 3-pack. So it will have this peach sauce in it. It will have something red, some kind of red sauce. So that may be strawberries, it may be cherries, I don't know. And then maybe the other one is blue and it's blueberries, or maybe it is green and it's a combination of blueberry mango. I don't know exactly, but I can just see it pictured in a little organza bag or something, the little 3 stacked up, and then a list of maybe a dozen things to do with these. And it includes over ice cream, over yogurt, and oatmeal bakes, in a pitcher of iced tea, in cocktails of any, lots of different varieties there, with seltzer water to make, a mock cocktail. I just think that it would be a lot of fun. I think my friends would have a lot of fun with it. I know I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. And one of the other uses I'm going to do is with kombucha. So I do a second ferment on my kombucha. I like to have a little bit of flavor in there. And I'm thinking that a peach ginger kombucha flavor sounds really good to me. So I'll be doing that as well. And I'm kind of excited about that. David's looking forward to that as well. All right, this next one is totally new to me, but it's one I've had stuck in my head for months now. It's really the reason I decided to plant several of the Sugar Rush peach pepper plants in my garden, because I thought peach barbecue sauce just sounded like the bomb, and it did. It sounds great, doesn't it? We're going to go through this one. I'm going to make it, and it's tasty, but I will tell you that as I was imagining this in my head, I didn't really go beyond the name. I didn't really go beyond the fact that I like peaches, I like barbecue sauce, and I didn't really get to, okay, so what is it going to taste like and what am I going to put it on? So the only thing that really came to mind was chicken, and I'll show you, we actually had this one last night. I'll put up a picture of it, and had it on a piece of chicken, and I'm kind of over chicken at the moment, so that may not have really done the peach barbecue sauce any favors. But we're going to go through and make this one, and I would love some ideas on how else I can use this, because I'm just over chicken. But I used 2 different recipes in this one, and I think if I had followed the one recipe exactly that had the honey in it, it would have been much better. I decided to make it not so sweet because David doesn't like things so sweet, and then of course I went the allulose route, and you lose all that wonderful honey flavor that's really particularly good in a barbecue sauce. So I probably did myself in on this one. I will post the link to the recipe below that has the honey in it that I probably should have followed entirely rather than mixing up a couple of different ones. But anyway, so let's go through this one and give me your thoughts on how you would use it. So this is a really simple recipe. It is peaches, peppers, assorted peppers. I used some sugar rush peach pepper and a red pepper because one of the recipes specifically called for red peppers. So I thought perhaps that was a color thing. And some vinegar, and then some seasonings, and then one of the recipes called for a sweetener and one did not. So it was pretty straightforward, and I did what I thought we would like best. And don't get me wrong, this is not it wasn't bad. It just, on the chicken, I don't know. I don't know what. I should have really thought this through. What is a peach barbecue sauce going to taste like on a piece of chicken? So I'm not sure that that was the right combination, and that could just be I'm just not into chicken right now, and that's fine. So if you have some ideas, do let me know, because I have a few jars of this left, and it's good. It should get more love than it did for me with the piece of chicken. So this is super quick, super easy, blending it up. I use the immersion blender, as you'll see, and that was a little bit tricky, particularly because of the little pieces of pepper. So I did end up with some kind of red flakes that you can see in there, and it made it pretty, but it just wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Although, when you don't follow directions, you don't always get what you're expecting. So I should be well used to that by now. But anyway, I thought it was a-okay, and actually David enjoyed it more than I did. And as always, when I am going off script on a recipe, I do check this for pH and make sure that it's fine. But I'm not going to include my exact recipe down below because I don't think I would make it again, even though I think it has potential. All right, one last recipe with the peaches. So this one is the peach jam version of the peach sauce. So it is from Pomona's Packed-In Cookbook, and it is that same maple vanilla peach jam, and I didn't use the maple or vanilla. So I went ahead and used my allulose, but at this time I used the calcium water and the pectin. So you can see that that one is a good firm set. And the peach sauce, which has no pectin in it, no calcium water, is not. So exact same recipe with and without pectin. So I decided to make this because this was so tasty. And I thought, well, this has a lot of great uses, but let's do this too, because I really like this keto bread that we found. And at least I can have keto bread and a little bit of peach jam because I did use the allulose. So that's my thought there. Let's take a look at this one going on. So another reason I wanted to do this one is David is not a big fan of the peach preserves. He doesn't like the little peaches in his jam. So, I don't know, the man's a little quirky. I don't really understand that. But I'm going to try to get him into a peach jam because we have breakfast together most mornings. So I'm going to see if he ends up liking these. I had originally thought he was going to want just some canned peaches again this year because we haven't had those in quite a while, and he did not. So peach jam it is, and I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I think he's going to like it. So again, it's back to the same basic recipe that I did before with the peach sauce. It's 3 1/4 pounds of fully ripe peaches and a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And then this one, I am definitely going to do the calcium water. And I'm going to use allulose, of course. And then the 3 teaspoons of Pomona's pectin. So as always, you mix up your pectin with whatever sugar it is that you're using. So if I were using the maple syrup like the recipe calls for, you would mix it up there. I'm going to mix it up in the allulose that I'm using just because you don't want the pectin to clump. So this is just as easy as the last one, really. It's just a couple extra steps of adding the calcium water, measuring it out because I am doing it with the pectin. I want to make sure that I have exactly the 4 cups that Pomonas wants you to have based on their measurements for the pectin and the calcium water. And then that's it. I mean, it's just so easy, and it is a beautiful, beautiful peach jam. So again, it is a 1/4 inch headspace, and it only takes 10 minutes to process in a water bath if you're below 1,000 feet. All right, so you might have seen in one of the opening scenes here that I had a whole bunch of tomatoes sitting over on my table over there that needed to be taken care of. So I do have some ideas for them. One in particular, I am planning to do another round of enchilada sauce. So because I had the peaches and because I actually want these to go ahead and be frozen, right? Because then I can just peel them so easily. They're going to be cooked, they're going to be blended. It's not going to matter if my tomatoes are going in fresh from the garden or straight from the freezer. So I wanted to go ahead and get these set aside so that I had them at the perfect ripeness and they're ready to go. And then I have another couple of recipes I'm playing with. I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out, but I think it'll be some sort of curry / tikka masala kind of sauce. So in looking at those 2 recipes, I'm setting aside tomatoes for those as well. So they're taken care of, they're in the freezer. That way, just the night before I want to make these sauces, I can take them out, let them defrost, and they'll be ready to go first thing in the morning for me when I'm ready for them. So I'm going to start by getting some rough weights on my tomatoes so I know kind of roughly what I need for each recipe. I'm going to get those tomatoes washed up, and then I cut out the core, and that's it. Into the bag it goes. I will measure again just to make sure my final weight stays the same because a couple of these had some spots I wanted to cut out, and that is just totally okay. So this is super easy, and I know that I have taken care of these tomatoes and preserved them at the perfect ripeness, and they're ready for me as soon as I'm ready for them. All right, next, the pickles are starting to come in, or cucumbers, I should say, and I'm turning them into pickles. So I went ahead and got a couple of refrigerator pickle jars done, and I haven't let David get into these yet. You know, they really need at least a week, preferably 2 in the refrigerator before you get into them, but we're really excited about these. There's really no recipe that you need to follow. You can do anything you want to do if you're not going to can it. So, well, normally when I'm canning, I use white vinegar because I like it to stay clear and beautiful. I'm using apple cider vinegar here, 1, because I had it, 2, because I really like it. I don't use it when I can because, you know, what I like about it is the mother and the probiotics in it. So that's what I'm going to use here. I'm going to add a little bit of a hot spicy pepper for David. I'm going to add some garlic, and I'm just going to shove these in. Put a little salt, maybe a little pickling spice. Add some apple cider vinegar. Top it off with some hot water, and into the refrigerator it goes. And it's best if it sits a couple of weeks, but at least a week, I think, until it really starts, until it gets to like it's pickles and it's not just cucumbers in vinegar, right? Because there's a difference, and somewhere in that 1 to 2 week mark is when that difference kicks in. So this was quick and easy, took care of it. And as I mentioned, I do love fermented pickles, and that's what I tend to do for longer term storage of pickles. I can some, I don't know, every few years I can some, but honestly, we just don't reach for them. So this year I'm probably just gonna do the fermented version. And of course, now that I've said that, I'll probably end up canning some. So we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, this is gonna get us started, and I'm excited to have them on the shelf. So my next batch of pickles will probably be the fermented variety. We love those too, but I wanted to go ahead and get some ready to go. Okay, so next on our list is to take care of some of these hot peppers. I have so many hot peppers coming in out of the garden right now. It is nuts. So I pulled everything that was red, orange, or just starting to turn orange. And I decided we're gonna put them in a fermented hot pepper mash. So this is the one I did. It's from a book called Fiery Ferments. And the recipe I used is on page 95, mixed media basic mash, which means the mixed media part means I added some onion in there as well. So I envision this when it's done fermenting here in a couple of weeks, it'll go in the fridge and it'll be something that David puts on his eggs in the morning. He throws it on a sandwich, he puts it on a bowl of chili, he throws it in a soup, he puts it on chicken. I just think he's going to put it on absolutely everything. In terms of cooking with it, I can see using it where I might use like the little thing you get in the Asian island, the grocery market. It's called chili garlic sauce, garlic chili sauce, something like that. It has a little green lid. I use that in a lot of Asian dishes. So whether it's beef and broccoli, or it's fried rice, or fried cauliflower rice in my case, but that's how I would see using it as cooking. I think he's just gonna put it on top of everything. So I'm excited to see how that one goes. So when you're gonna ferment, there are a couple of different types of fermenting. And when we're talking about vegetables, there is the wet ferment, which means you start with your salted, heavily salted water mixture, and you get that all mixed up, and that is your wet ferment. This mash is going to use the dry fermentation process. So it's much like sauerkraut. You don't add water when you're making sauerkraut. You let the salt bring out the liquid in the cabbage, and that becomes your fermenting liquid. Well, the salt is going to do the exact same thing when I process these peppers and onions in the food processor. It's going to start to bring out the liquid, and you'll see as we mash that down into the jars, there's going to be more and more liquid, and there will be plenty of liquid to cover all of the solids in this. So when you start with the pepper mash, it can stay that kind of mash. It can be added to other projects, just perhaps maybe it goes in another sauce of some kind. It can be used kind of as a starter, an inoculant really, in another fermentation project you may be doing. Or you can just turn it into hot sauce. You can strain out all of the solids, mash them down, get all the liquid out of the solids, and turn it into a hot sauce. So this is really just as simple as putting it in the processor, letting it do its thing, and then I'm going to put it in the jars, and we are going to mash down the solids. I'm going to put these little weights that I always use in my ferments. I'm going to put those down in there. So that's it for me for week 2. I'm excited about week 3. I have stuff piling up. Imagine that in garden season. I have lots of produce piling up. I have a list of other things I need to get done. So I'm excited to get next week done. I'm thrilled to have this done and ready, and I can't wait to get on to my enchilada sauce and whatever else I'm going to make with the rest of these tomatoes. So I hope you have a wonderful week. I thank you so much for being here with me. I would love to know what you have preserved this week and what you plan to preserve next week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.